Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Okay.
We were trying a different setup with the camera, but it wasn't solving all the problems that we were hoping it would solve, so we're back to the regular one. Should we get a second webcam so we can leave it? So we can have a more permanent fixture?
Yes. I want a permanent fixture.
I'm just including people in the development of this podcast.
I don't know if we need a second one. It's fine.
Now in our third season.
It's only once a week. I can reset it up every time.
Yeah. Okay, Winnie is touching my foot, and it tickled me very badly. What's going on? What are you doing?
What am I doing? It's
weekend.
Sunday, and Wizard Unite is like tweeting, and I'm like, "Why? It's Sunday, bros. Wait till Monday." Everyone's just chilling.
Don't you know this is a WizardPhD day off from the game?
Yeah, I don't play Wizards Unite on Sundays.
From streaming?
Just kidding.
Yeah, you played, but
yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know what's
Pokemon Snap got announced.
Oh my god, the new Pokemon Snap, which I will definitely be playing.
That was a hype train like crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I love Pokemon Snap.
I know it caused you to play the N64 one streamed a little bit.
Yeah, I finished the game.
You beat it.
I got to Mew and I got
had the perfect Mew.
I almost had a perfect Mew. I should ask my sister if she remembers how close a score we got when we were kids.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, you might have gotten it. I feel like you probably neither of you would have stopped until you got it, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty regular week, I guess. You know. You had some good streaming.
Yep.
We're on the Brilliant event.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big news for the WizardPhD fandom is the next season here.
Fandom.
I was gonna say brand. I don't know.
Yeah.
The next season here.
The next
what we're
season.
doing right now.
All right. Prisoner of Azkaban. Okay, I have only read this book once in my entire life.
Yep.
When I was a child.
Yep.
So details are a little fuzzy, although I know the story, obviously. But
well, luckily we do the episode after we read the chapter, not before, so it'll be perfectly fine.
Yeah,
it's
so I'm just saying that I may or may not be more attentive to detail than I usually am.
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether it'll make you more attentive or less.
Yeah.
Hard to say.
Yeah.
We'll see. Ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Juan's ready. Turn to page 1, the Owl Post. Today's lesson is called Apart But Connected. Synopsis. The chapter begins with Harry Potter back living at 4 Privet Drive, managing to study magic without the Dursleys being aware. Harry was recounting his renewed isolation from the wizarding world and his 2 best friends, Ron and Hermione, when he realized that a new day had started as he studied through the night, his 13th birthday. As Harry reminisced about Ron's ill-fated attempt to call him on the Muggle telephone, he spotted 3 owls making their way for his room: Hedwig, Errol, the Weasley family owl, and an unknown 3rd owl. What began as another lonely and uncelebrated birthday for Harry quickly turned to his favorite birthday yet, when he discovered presents from Ron, Hermione, and Hagrid. Harry finally goes to bed plotting how to get the Dursleys to let him go to London and Diagon Alley to shop for his school equipment.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Harry.
Short synopsis.
It always
Short
starts
chapter.
at Privet Drive with him being sad.
Yeah.
Okay, so this date is, July 30th turning to July 31st, 1993, because it's Harry's 13th birthday. 13. Special number. So my mind went down this weird rabbit hole because I was a little confused when I was reading, because very initially, because he's talking about how he's unusual, but he wanted to do homework, but did it in the middle of the night, and I was like, dude, it's summertime. And then when I read we have summer assignments, and I'm like, why are you assigning? So what happened with my brain is I was like, who invented homework? That is where my brain went. So I Googled it.
And you found something.
Yeah, I found some things.
Douglas homework.
No. Okay, so apparently mentions of the term homework date back to ancient Rome, with the idea of this guy named Pliny the Younger, or I think it's a guy, I don't know, an oratory teacher supposedly invented homework by asking his followers to practice public speaking at home. Makes sense. What are you going to do? Just gather every time to practice? Be more efficient. However, this thing that popped up and like why I think I like reacted and then I like left the room because I was like, oh my God. Well, apparently this might be an internet myth. So this person named Roberto Novellis of Venice, Italy is credited often with inventing homework in 1095 or 1905, depending on what your source is. But
oh my goodness,
supposedly,
that's so different.
Yeah, it is so different. Supposedly, like this myth is that this guy, as a teacher, invented homework to punish his students. And so that's why I was like,
yep.
Oh my God. Because I was like, of course it is.
Yep.
But it seems that it's a myth and it doesn't really have any facts or evidence to back it up. But actually, in the context of American schooling, so there's this person named Horace Mann, who was a politician and educational reformer. So apparently, like, he I don't know exactly. Well, so I did read a bit about his backstory. So he grew up poor and didn't really have his school. It was typical of like many Americans at that time, where it was like a one-room schoolhouse, and depending on where you lived, like you might not have had really good access to resources or anything. And so part of his story, I think, or why it's interesting and fascinating to read about these things, is that so like he ended up leaving and getting a good education, college education, studied law, became a politician, traveled the world, and apparently, like in his travels, encountered schooling structures that had required homework for practice. Now, supposedly though, so like he he was in Europe at the time, and the political origins of homework was actually like the government trying to assert some sort of power and being like, oh, well, we're going to like make you do things at home that's like connected to the schools. And because in Germany, he was looking at a compulsory public education system in Germany as a newly unified nation state. And so it was like people's schools and stuff. And so like this was like spreading, like this idea of homework was spreading. And so he found out about it, I guess, when he was in Prussia, or this is what that says, and brought the idea back with him in the United States. And homework became a daily activity in the lives of students. So he is credited with the Common School movement. It was a movement in the 1830s that was pushing for a tax-funded, well-developed state public education system. And I bring back his experiences because, like, as someone who didn't have access to things, like perhaps the idea of like, oh, well, what if we just had like public education and like did all these things? So of course, like homework, contemporary perspectives on homework is quite controversial, but it's not new or specific to this time period. There are fluctuations. So with mandatory or mandating, like what is homework as being seen as this is what we should do, and then actually periods. So when I was reading, it was like from like the 50s to mid 60s. I read so much about homework. I'm so sorry. This is
you
so
did homework
boring.
on homework.
This is so boring. Well, it's fascinating to me that like the term homework is like the sticking thing, and used colloquially, like even outside the context of like formalized schooling, like, oh, I have homework to do.
Yeah.
Because it's like literally work that
Businesses
you do at home,
do it too, right?
Rather than like, oh, I have an assignment to do, or like a task, or just any other mundane word that you could use. It's homework, which of course carries connotations. So from the 50s to mid 60s, homework was kind of like an encouraged thing in schools. And then like from the mid 60s to like the beginning of the 80s, it was kind of like people were like, no homework, not necessary, whatever. And then this is why earlier
what
today,
a time to be alive.
I was talking to you about a nation at risk and all this. So for all my ed friends out there, notable sorts of pieces of text that really persuaded or pushed educational movements. And so homework is controversial, and it's fascinating to see like how.
Yeah, it totally should be. This wasn't where I expected to go in this episode, but I'm happy going down it. I think homework, I've always had a love-hate for homework. Like there are times when I'm like, I'm really glad that I'm getting this practice, but for the most part, I've been like, this is so stupid.
Yeah.
Like there's a reason why you should turn on and off, that it can't be a 24/7 experience to try to learn specific things,
right,
unless you're like so motivated to do it, in which case it doesn't matter whether you have homework or not. So I think like there's a way in which homework is conceptualized as like an equalizer, right? That by giving people a lot of time and practice, that they can, you know, all kind of become better and remediate the differences. But then there, I think in practice it probably does the opposite, right?
Yeah.
People have access to different resources and supports, and so utilize homework as a mechanism, as opposed to like the homework itself being somehow like just good by its nature.
Yeah. What's fascinating is that, like, okay, so the idea of homework as practice and like that sort of thing, and connecting to this guy specifically being like, oh, look at these schools here, like we should bring it all back. But then the pushback is kind of like, well, why am I doing memorization of like math facts like during summer break, whatever. And so then like the period where homework, it was like anti-homework, pushing it away. But when it came back, it was reimagined, I guess. It's not really, but it was kind of like, oh, well, homework should be connected to the home or the contact, like students. And so I read more articles about homework
the chapter was short, people. The chapter was short.
But just and so it was connecting to the, like, you know, the what did I do this summer type essays that are assigned. But Harry's writing an essay about like witch burning.
Legit question. Actually, I like the way that it's set up, because it's like discuss. I've always liked those types of approaches, because it's very much like, here is a historical or important idea, like talk about it, and you decide the direction that you want to go for it.
Yeah, it was
even though there seemed to be like a clear right answer based at least on what Harry was writing.
For sure, from the textbook. Yeah. Well, what was interesting is that I didn't notice before, but like so Gwendolyn the Weird comes up, and like, well, that is fun, because I've heard of her as a, you know, a person, because she's on a chocolate frog card.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I didn't really bother to look. I mean, there's not really much about her. We basically get it all in this chapter right here.
Yeah, right.
Where she basically, like, she liked the sensation of, like, the burning and then using the fire protection charm or whatever. That made me laugh. But it
seems like the type of thing that could be, like, a myth, in the sense that it's potentially, like, maybe her actual story, and this is totally off the wall speculation, would be something like she was kind of undercover in order to figure out what types of muggles, like what groups of muggles were sort of dangerous or more dangerous to the wizarding world than others, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I like.
So she like did this as part of some other.
I was thinking about this prompt a lot, because like as J.K. Rowling, you can literally, it's your world. Like you're assigning fake homework. Like what is the prompt going to be? And I thought it was interesting, because I wondered if the point was to like connect like this topic that's like, oh, witch burning was a waste of time, next to the Dursleys, who freaking hate magic, and being kind of like, all right, dudes, like, what are you doing? Like, you're not really doing as much as the Dursleys try to harm Harry with their like psychological violence or whatever, or just locking him away. Like, I don't know.
Did you happen to look into more of like if there are any other later descriptions of Egyptian magic or ancient Egyptian
I didn't
magic?
get into the magic,
Me neither.
The other magic pieces, because it wasn't till like the end of the chapter when Harry's reading the letters from Ron and Hermione, and I was like, oh man, they're like traveling the world, and Harry's just stuck at
Hermione's like,
Drive.
oh, I'm changing what I wrote.
Both of them,
I learned stuff.
Both of them said that.
I think it's did Ron say that?
I think
too?
he said that too.
Yeah, I think it's a nice way of like giving us this depth. I noted that one thing that she did, right, is she kind of, J.K. Rowling changed the intro a little bit. So one thing, I was going to name the title Same But Different, or Same But Different. But the first two first chapters, so however I want to say that, the first two books, the way they start, generally has to do with like Harry's displacement from the magical world, or I mean, not necessarily the first chapter, but when Harry gets introduced to it, it's like he doesn't. I'm a what?
Yeah.
And then like Dobby being like he doesn't know what to do. But then this one, she uses Ron as a way of leveraging that Harry actually belongs more now, or has a foot in two worlds. Like it's very clear that like the wizards don't know things about muggles, like using a phone.
Right.
Our favorite, both of us talked about how our favorite thing was like, Dad
Ron.
reckons that I shouldn't have shouted. That's my favorite.
Oh my
Just
gosh.
great. Yeah.
It's just so cute. I love their friendship. Like,
Yeah.
I love Harry and Ron. Ron annoys me, like, sometimes. But I love how pure it is and how Ron he's always there. And he's, like, there to support Harry. And okay, so this is kind of related, but off a little bit tangent, because I was thinking a lot about the Weasley family again, because so Harry opens like the Ron and Hermione, and then he also opens like the Hogwarts thing, which we can talk about at the end. But the other thing he opens is this Daily Prophet clipping, and it's like of them, the Weasley family, on vacation in Egypt. And so I was thinking so they went on that trip because they won this like prize, 400 galleons or whatever.
Right.
And it brought me back to this idea again of like so even we've talked about this before, like magical world muggle problems or whatever. Are there magical problems? Because like the Weasleys, for them to go on a trip, like, well, not only are they going on this trip, like the whole family, all 9 of them, but also they're going to buy Ron a new wand. And so I was thinking again about like their the way that other people treat them is like, oh, you don't have any money, and like the hierarchies that still exist, even though you have magic, resources aren't distributed the same. And so I don't know, I thought about that sort of thing again.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. The framing of their even existing a very poor magical family is actually quite fascinating, I think, to add sort of these layers where you actually have the differentiation between the Malfoys and the Weasleys is money, wealth.
Yeah.
It's like, that's weird. Like a little bit. It's a little weird that such thing is real. Yeah.
So back to the homework thing. So Ron says in here that he like his essay is like 2 feet longer than
that was Hermione.
It was her. Oh, sorry, that was Hermione. I was getting it mixed up. Never mind.
Yeah.
But
Ron's was too short.
The fact that like Ron on this trip has access to like Egyptian magical stuff. Hermione has access to whatever she has access to. And Malfoy, I don't know, like he can probably pay someone to like give him facts about or interesting facts. What does Harry have? Harry has an ungrateful family who are muggles that neglect him, and he's literally in secret trying to work on this like assignment for the summertime, like talking about differences like in terms of resources, like a wide range of disparities.
It's really hard to dislike Harry in this moment at all. Like to think about like somebody turning 12, 13 and
He
like trying to
snuck into
study
his
by
cupboard, and
himself
he's
at
like,
night. Yeah.
As long as I don't get ink on the sheets, and I'm just like, oh, Harry, let me adopt you. My God.
Yeah, it's pretty
You're
devastating.
So sweet.
Okay, do you want to hear about what I looked at?
Yes, I do.
Or do you have more?
No, keep going.
Okay.
I'll interject.
So I decided that I wanted to look up communication in the wizarding world because of the owl post and sort of the theme of it.
Yeah.
So I found this really nice Reddit post by a user named Mathy16.
Oh, good. Mathy.
And they were like a communication major or something and decided to talk about communication in the wizarding world. So here's a few different things that we could talk about. So we know about the owl post, and there's details about like use of owls and stuff that we could talk about if we wanted to. What else have we seen? We've seen the Flu Network for travel in the second book, but it can also be used to speak in the sense without teleportation. You just put your head into the fire and then you can speak and the person on another side could hear you. So it's a little bit closer to like a telephone. Yeah.
Or FaceTime.
We'll see. So some of this is future looking, but this is maybe more like FaceTime. The two-way mirror. This is something that Sirius and James Potter used at some point in their lives, where basically that this person, Matthew, even talked about it as FaceTiming or Skyping. So you have mirror pairs, and you can see each other in them and talk, but they're believed to be very rare. Let's see, the Protean charm. So we'll see this later on in, I guess, the fifth book, which is like linking objects to show the same communication. So there's like a master object and then like kind of like parent and child objects. So you alter the parent and then it transports that alteration to all of these linked child ones. So it's a way of like kind of secretly communicating. And so Hermione sets it up where they use coins and she puts this powerful charm on them and she can change it and it tells the rest of the group what she changes it to. And then we know about interdepartmental memos, those are especially at the Ministry of Magic, where they're basically charmed paper airplanes, which is kind of a fascinating idea.
We have one somewhere.
Yeah, we do have some.
Somewhere.
There's a couple of like Muggle styles. So you have the Daily Prophet, like journalism. There's also radio that we'll hear about at some point, the Wizarding Wireless Network. And then apparently also there was a television used by witches and wizards. In the early 1980s, the British Wizarding Broadcasting Corporation was formed. The project was rejected and canned by the ministry on the grounds of it being a severe breach of the International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy. Who knows why? And then one or two other things. One more thing, I think. The Patronus charm, which we'll see used in this book, but we'll actually see in the 5th, 6th, maybe 7th book, somewhere, definitely the 7th, but maybe the 6th as well. Communication via the Patronus. And this was apparently a use of the spell invented by Albus Dumbledore and held very secret in the Order of the Phoenix. Basically, how to do it isn't widely known. But it's an incredibly valuable style of communication because the communication is done by the Patronus. And if it's a corporeal Patronus, then you would be able to necessarily know who cast it if you know that they have that Patronus. So it's a kind of a encrypted text, encrypted communication. So I thought it was kind of interesting to think about like Harry's isolation. So far at this point, like, they try to break it with the telephone, but basically it's the wizarding post. And I thought it was just interesting to think about like this person, Matthew, was actually the end of their post was speculating about changes in Muggle communication and whether those would get adopted at all by the wizards. And we've talked at length to each other about the internet and
emails,
what use it might have.
Social media.
The underground.
I just got my Hogwarts letter Instagram post.
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah. So that's it.
Yeah. So actually, I think I could be wrong about this, but so we have Hedwig, we have Errol, and then we have this third owl that just kind of drops off the Hogwarts letter and leaves.
Right.
I think that owl is the one from that brilliant event that one time where Harry's like, it's just an owl, right? This doesn't have any significance. Because I've been trying to make connections between the Foundables for Harry Potter Wizards Unite, the Foundables, and the like moment in memory. Like where could this? Yeah, it could be a random owl, but is there a specific moment that? Because the entry is called like post owl. Like that's what the Foundable is called. So I don't know. I was wondering that might be.
Well, I was also thinking like, so this seems to be the one that Hagrid, and I think Hagrid might have rented it. It seems like there's a postal service.
Yeah. So there's an owlery
you go rent the
on Hogwarts.
Well, at Hogwarts, yeah. But apparently there's one more generally where you can go with something to ship essentially, and you like pay the owl, and the owl does it and comes back. Yeah. So you don't have to own the owl.
Yeah.
It's interesting. But it's a relatively uneventful beginning. Just kind of setting up Harry, trying to...
Yeah, I think that the end of this chapter is important, though, because I believe the beginning of Chamber of Secrets started similarly, where it was like Harry talking about how he's unusual, or like this is... another like reminder that his life is not typical or even comfortable at all. And that's why he loves being at Hogwarts and he hates summer vacation. But at the end, it's like the end of his birthday. And he says like he finally felt like everyone else. Like happy that it was his birthday or whatever it was. And I feel like that speaks a little bit more to the relationships and the love that he is surrounded by, not by his family by blood, even though that's supposed to protect him, but like contrast that with like the people who actually love and care for him and protect him in the wizarding world. And so it's I don't know, it just like stood out to me more this time of like, okay.
It sets up his connection, right? Yeah. That he's kind of less isolated in some ways than he has been in the past. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, good start.
Yeah.
Ready to roll on this book.
Yeah.
Not too much longer than the second book, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Then once we get to the fourth one, that's three times longer than the second.
We're going to have to skip the chapters.
It'll be good. Yeah, we'll have to do 2 at a time. No, who knows? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Until next time, Juan's ready.